Welcome back, everyone, to season 4 of the Truth and Freedom podcast, where awakening begins with asking the question most people are afraid to ask. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Amzallag, and this is not just another podcast. This is a journey into awareness, courage, and truth. So, niceness is one of the most misunderstood virtues in our culture. We praise it, we reward it, and often mistake it for goodness, kindness, or emotional intelligence. But niceness, when examined honestly, is not always about care. Very often, it's about control. It's about avoiding discomfort, preserving image, and managing how others perceive us. And when niceness is driven by fear rather than integrity, it becomes a subtle form of manipulation. Most people learn to be nice early in life, not because it's virtuous, but because it's safe. Niceness keeps you accepted. It keeps you conflict at bay. It reduces the risk of rejection. So for many, being nice becomes a survival strategy, especially in environments where honesty wasn't welcomed or boundaries weren't respected. And like all survival strategies, it works until it doesn't. So the problem with niceness is not politeness or consideration. The problem is when niceness replaces truth. When you say yes but mean no. When you smile while resenting. When you suppress your needs to keep the peace and then quietly punish others for not meeting needs you never expressed. That's not kindness. That's emotional avoidance. And avoidance, even when dressed as politeness, distorts relationships. Niceness often says, I'll be agreeable so you don't leave. Or something like, I'll accommodate you so I don't have to feel uncomfortable. Or even better, I'll make myself easy to deal with so you won't see the real me. And while that may not be conscious manipulation, it still influences outcome. It still withholds information. It still creates a false sense of harmony built on self-betrayal. So truth is different. Truth risks friction. Truth is clear. Truth doesn't need to manage perception because it's grounded in alignment rather than approval. So when you're truthful, you're not trying to control how someone reacts. You're respecting their rights to respond. And niceness tries to engineer outcomes. Truth allows consequences. So this is why niceness often collapses under pressure. Because what's being protected isn't the relationship, it's the self-image. And when that image is threatened, resentment surfaces. Passive aggression appears. Withdrawal replaces communication. And the very niceness that once kept things calm becomes a source of confusion and distance. So in the Truth and Freedom podcast that we discuss here on a daily basis, we talk about this not to criticize, but to clarify. Being kind is not the same as being nice. Kindness is honest. Kindness is boundaried. Kindness can tolerate discomfort because it isn't afraid of the truth. Niceness, on the other hand, often requires suppression, something like anger, desire, disagreement, and authenticity. And what gets suppressed doesn't disappear. It leaks out sideways. So engaged listeners like you have likely reached a point where niceness no longer feels noble. It feels exhausting. You've noticed how much energy it takes to maintain harmony at the expense of honesty. You felt the cost of being liked but not known. And maybe you've started to sense that real connection requires something sturdier than politeness. It requires integrity. Choosing truth over niceness doesn't make you cruel. It makes you clear. It allows relationships to be built on reality rather than performance. It gives others accurate information about who you are and what you need. And yes, it may cost you approval, but approval gained through self-erasure was never safety. It was conditional acceptance. And freedom begins when you stop managing reaction and start standing in alignment. When you allow yourself to be misunderstood rather than misrepresented. When you trust that the right people can handle your honesty, and the ones who can't were never relating to the real you anyway. So this podcast exists to support that shift, to help you move from pleasing to relating, from controlling outcomes to honoring truth, from being nice to being real. Because real connection doesn't require manipulation. It requires courage. And courage, practiced constantly, becomes freedom. So if you feel yourself hesitating before telling the truth, ask not whether it's nice, but whether it's honest. Ask whether you're protecting the relationship or protecting your fear. Because niceness may keep the peace for a moment, but truth is what creates relationship that can actually last. So I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this episode today of the why being nice is often a form of manipulation. So in our next episode, we will cover the popular topics of the misinformed concept of social media isn't destroying mental health. Avoidance is. So if this statement applies to you, then tuning in to the next episode should be one of your priorities. Until then, my friends, stay awake, stay grounded, and stay free.